Now, General John Kelly, who is now the White House Chief of Staff, has made a lot of changes to the White House, okay? Some of which happen to be getting on the nerves of Donald Trump, or at least starting to. Now, according to a report in the New York Times, one of the instances described of this is when staff members gently suggested that he refrain from injecting politics into day-to-day issues of governing after last month's rally in Arizona, which he did in abundance of. I mean, you guys remember the video of that rally in Arizona. He's talking about fake news, talking about Hillary Clinton, he's talking about how much he won during Arizona. Okay. Anyway, now he responded to this by lashing out at his most senior aide in his presence, which happened to be John Kelly. Already, this is funny because look, that advice is literally the most sensible advice that you could give somebody in higher office. Hey, don't inject politics into everything because you're the president now. You're not running for president. You are the president, and you have serious issues. You're not campaigning. Well, Donald Trump comes out there and he's like, "Oh, campaign rally. This is where I'm at my best. I'm going to talk about fake news. I'm going to talk about the media. I'm talking about Hillary Clinton." You should actually talk about the real issues. No, but he doesn't, because he doesn't care about the real issues, right? I mean, like, this person probably is like, "Hey, man, look, when you're talking about, changing the tax code or, what you're going to do for people in Arizona, for example, don't bring up fake media. Don't bring up how much you won by." And yet Trump, he's such a baby. He's got such a thin skin. He replies with, "No, you don't control me. I'm going to go yell at a 4-star general." Oh, that's smart. Oh, wonderful. Now, let's see what happens when he yells at a 4-star general, like John Kelly. Now, Kelly reacted calmly, but later told White House staff members that he has never been spoken to like that during 35 years of serving his country. This is according to 3 sources close to the fight telling the New York Times. Now, in the future, he said, he would not abide such treatment. Ooh, them's fighting words, man. Now, look, as much as I disagree with John Kelly on policy grounds, don't get me started, he has actually had the distinction of serving the country. That is unlike the giant orange draft dodging baby that we have in office right now. Remember this guy? He's like, "Oh, I got bone spurs in my foot, and that prevented me from serving my country." Really? He was asked about the bone spurs, and he couldn't remember which foot they were in. "Oh, I thought it was such a debilitating injury that you couldn't actually serve your country, but you couldn't remember." And not only that, but he had said that avoiding VD or STDs was his personal Vietnam. This guy's the worst. But look, this even gets more hilarious. The Times further goes on to explain how the president is now actually starting to regret the job that Kelly was set to do. Which, of course, his job is to make an incredibly dysfunctional White House at least somewhat functional. Now, they write that while Mr. Kelly has quickly brought some order to a disorganized and demoralized staff, he's fully aware of the president's volcanic resentment about being managed, according to a dozen people close to Mr. Trump, and has treaded gingerly through the minefield of Mr. Trump's psyche, but the president has still bridled at what he perceives as being told what to do. Like every new sheriff in town, Mr. Trump is hired to turn things around at the White House or in his presidential campaign. Mr. Kelly has gradually diminished in his appeal to his restless boss. What is different this time is that Mr. Trump, mired in self-destructive controversies and record low approval ratings, needs Mr. Kelly more than Mr. Kelly needs him. Now, unfortunately, like, that's super true, okay? Because John Kelly, again, for all of his faults when it comes to policy, he's not there to elevate himself, right? And I go back to that Scaramucci quote, because it's fucking hilarious. Steve Bannon, chief strategist, basically he was accused of sucking his own cock. Okay, that's what he said. And not in a literal sense, but in a figurative sense. As in, all he's there is to elevate himself. And that's what I think a lot of the staffers are in the Trump administration, just people who are opportunists. and they're looking for opportunity. They're latching on to the president so they can get book deals and speaking tour. I mean, Sean Spicer today announced that he's going on a speaking tour for lots of money. That's what it's about. Okay, it's about propelling oneself using the office of the presidency or using the executive branch. I mean, it's a pretty quick way to get some money, to make some easy cash. Now, John Kelly, he's not interested in that. He's interested in serving his country. Whether or not I disagree with him on the ways that he is looking to serve, that's what he's trying to do. So, yeah, Trump needs Kelly in order to get shit done. But Kelly can walk away at any time. Now, I'm not sure Trump is smart enough or stable enough to realize that. My guess is both. He is not smart enough and not stable enough to realize, and I'm not the only one here. A lot of White House aides are actually wondering how long Mr. Kelly is actually going to stay. Now, the estimates internally, this is from internal sources, range from a month to a year at most. So, look, these guys, their previous pastime, by the way, was guessing at how long Reince Priebus would last before he got fired. Now, Reince Priebus, now this guy was like, you want to talk milquetoast, right? The milquetoastiest of the milquetoast. This is a guy who Trump ordered to kill flies for him. You think he's going to order a 4-star general to kill his flies? Didn't think so. So, and if he tries, there will be hell to pay. You think he's going to stand there and take that? No, of course not. So a lot of them are wondering whether or not Kelly's going to walk out and when. Now, and again, he's there out of a, I guess, how do I put it? He thinks it's his duty to watch over the man-child, to make sure that he doesn't destroy the country. It's turned into a babysitting gig. Look, you can have a little bit of respect for somebody you disagree with, but who realizes that this administration is a complete disaster and kind of wants to rein it in before he does something crazy. Now, and to be fair, look, Trump isn't too averse to some bit of organization, and let's be fair. For example, since Kelly has tightened access to information and certain people, the president is no longer feeling, in his words, overwhelmed. The president, for his part, they write, has marveled at the installation of management controls that would have been considered routine by any other White House. So this is like normal standard operating procedure. But since Trump moved in, they weren't running by standard operating procedure. It was like fly by seat of your pants zoo. So, and now with like normal control established, like any other White House, Trump's like, oh my God, things aren't crazy today. In fact, he says, I now have time to think. Oh, goodness. I now have some time to think. Maybe that's not a good thing. I don't know. But the fact that you weren't thinking before was fairly obvious from what he's done. Now, how sad, right? Again, you're the president. You're supposed to think. Now, I know you can run the White House as you see fit, but Trump chose to run it like a fucking zoo. Now, was there any question of how that would turn out? Apparently there was, because they didn't institute these kinds of rules. Okay. Now, here's another interesting tidbit about Trump's access to certain pieces of information. Now, the Post notes that Mr. Kelly cannot stop Trump from binge-watching Fox News, which aides describe as the president's primary source of information gathering. And no wonder he knows next to nothing about policy, because he watches Fox News religiously, but we already knew that. So, no big surprise there. However, since Mr. Trump does not have a web browser on his phone and does not use a laptop, he was very dependent on aides like Stephen Bannon, his former chief strategist, to hand-deliver printouts of articles from conservative media outlets. Gee, I wonder which outlet Bannon gave Trump the most. Now, Mr. Kelly has thinned out his package of printouts so much that Mr. Trump plaintively asks a friend recently where the Daily Caller and Breitbart were. Hey, where's my Breitbart? Where's my Daily Caller? I don't get that anymore. Where's my super right-wing information? Hey, look, props to Kelly on that at least. The less Daily Caller and Breitbart Trump reads, the better. Now, one more piece of information about the relationship between Trump and Kelly. While they do have a good personal rapport, the president hates being managed, as you already knew, and is incredibly bitter about other people who happen to call the shots. Which, again, is leading to the question of how long Mr. Kelly and the president, two men with such divergent approaches to the common goal of Mr. Trump's success, will be able to coexist. And my answer to that is no. Eventually, one of them's going to get sick of the other. My guess is that Trump gets tired of it, this organization, and ends up firing him. But Kelly quitting, also not out of the question. One associate who spoke to Mr. Kelly last month said the former commander had remarked that his current assignment, being a babysitter, was by far the hardest job he had ever had. His favorite gig, he joked, was his first, Marine grunt. If that doesn't tell you how difficult the job of managing our man-baby president is, I don't know what will. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.